Okay, so this lesson is about how to complete a value chart, which is going to help you complete your self-portrait. And as it says here, it is practice for your self-portrait. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be, let's see if I can zoom in a little here, you're going to be shading the spaces below from lightest to darkest to the best of your ability. Now, I've conveniently placed percentage marks so you can see. So what we have here is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different rectangles, and they're each labeled from 0 all the way to 100%. And we are going to be filling these with different levels of darkness or lightness, depending on that percentage mark, and we will do it in two different ways. We will do regular shading, and then we'll do something called cross-hatching, which I'll show in a minute. So shading is when you use a side-to-side shading motion, and you're going to build up a smooth layer. Now 0, as it says up here, is white, and so you can leave that blank. 100% is as black as you can get without ripping the page, of course. The key here is to think of these as stairs. And one thing we take for granted about stairs is when you take steps up your stairs, the distance up is the same each time. If one stair went like this and the next stair was short, it would be very, very strange if your stairs were like that. Well, the same thing here with our shading. We want it to go up by the same amount of darkness each time. And that's the trick here. We don't want, for example, 60% dark and 70% dark to be almost the same. We want to be able to get 10 different levels of light and dark, because then you can, if you know how to do that, you can use those in your self-portrait and use 10 different levels of light or dark to make your drawing better. I like to start with dark, and so shading is just going back and forth. On the side is fine. If you go a little bit outside of the lines, that's fine. You can turn the page around to get to the edges easier. And remember, this is the darkest one possible, so you're going to press hard on this. And aside from going up by even amounts for each rectangle, the other thing you want to do is you want to fill each rectangle completely. That's 2. That's number 2. And the third thing you want to do is you want to fill each rectangle evenly with that shade. So for example, I left this spot here lighter, and that's not okay. We want that whole area to be the same level of darkness, and this is just for the practice. You wouldn't be drawing like this with rectangles in your drawing, but just for this practice here. So I'm going to go around and fill it in. So there's my 100% dark. Now I'm going to go to 90% dark, and I'm going to go lighter, but I'm not going to go too dark, and here's why. I can always make it darker without having to erase if I make it too light. However, if I make it too dark, like let's say I make it 95% or close to 100, like 97%, very close, then I'm in trouble because I have to erase, and then the paper will eventually get damaged. So I'm always going to start lighter and work my way up to that, what I think is 90%. So that clearly is not 90%. What value do you think that's about? Where would that fit? Would that be more like 50, 60, 70, or 80? What do you think? Yes?
60?
Yeah, that's probably more like a 60. So that gives me an idea of what a 60 is. So I'm going to keep working on here. Notice how I am shading. I'm using short, controlled strokes. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing these big, wide strokes. I'm doing short, back and forth, controlled strokes. That's very important. It is a good idea to start maybe turning, because sometimes, see, because I go side by side, that's going to be an easier way to get to that edge there by going side by side. So for that bottom edge, I go sideways. That'll be easier. I don't think I'm at 90 yet, but I'm getting there. Almost there. I can leave it there for now. What I'm noticing is, what's very important is that I can tell the difference between the two. If two rectangles look the same, we have a problem. They should all be different. So I'm going to stop here for 90, and then I would keep working down. 10 is also difficult, because 10 has to be, very, very light, and that's tricky. People have a lot of trouble making it very, very light. I suggest, wearing down your pencil a bit so that you can get like a long side on there, instead of using the tip. Don't use the tip, and then slowly, as lightly as you can, you can kind of see it there in the video, as lightly as you can, filling that in. Remember, you're filling all the way to the very end so that it's even all the way across that rectangle. Take your time. Some people might finish this in 5 minutes. Don't. To do a good job, to get a level 4, you've got to spend a good half an hour to an hour on this, okay? So that might be 10%. I can see the difference between 0 and 10. Now, moving on to cross-hatching. We're going to do the same thing. We want the 100 to be super dark, 10 to be light, but this time we're doing cross-hatching. What is that? It's hatching marks overlaid at right angles. Well, hatching marks are just like this. These are hatching marks. They're not drawn with a ruler. They're kind of roughly done, usually at a bit of an angle. So that's a hatching mark. So overlaying another one at a right angle means, crossing over like that. These are cross-hatching marks. Okay? So let's start with the super dark. Now the trick here is usually you don't want to leave white spaces, but with hatching and cross-hatching, you're going to usually have some white spaces. My hatching marks look like they're curving a bit for some reason today. I think it's just Friday and I'm tired. So there's my hatching marks. I'm going to start with hatching marks, and then I'm going to overlay, I'm going to turn my page around, and now cross over. So now it becomes cross-hatching. You can see that it's curving a bit at the end. That's okay. That's still cross-hatching. See if I can zoom in a bit so you can get a better look. There we go. Now I've gone through it once. I can go over it a bit more if I want to, even at different angles. That's okay. The idea here, so there still are some white spaces, and that's okay. The big question here is going to be, is it, and you can compare, about as dark as this 100%? Almost, and that's pretty good. I think that's good enough, because you don't want to get rid of all the white spaces, because then you won't see the cross-hatching. My cross-hatching, it's not zooming in so well, but the whole point with cross-hatching is that you get kind of a texture, like a weave, as in a fabric, for example. And then I would go to the next one, and I would cross-hatch, and maybe make it just a little bit lighter. For the 10%, I'm actually going to have to cross-hatch and press very, very light. That's the key for the light one, is to just really press light. If you press too dark, it won't work. And that is it. So you will, as a review, shade from 10% to 100% with a careful side-to-side motion, filling in each rectangle completely to the edges, number 1. Number 2, they should be filled in the same value. So I shouldn't see a dark area up here and a lighter area in the corner. And 3, we should take even 10% steps from dark to light or light to dark, so that each rectangle is a different value and takes an equal step up. We repeat the same process over here, but using cross-hatching instead of shading.